city, I've been browsing. Treading water that they drowning. My head on a swivel, yeah. It's only really my surroundings.
Welcome to episode 20 of the Smash Accept podcast. I'm your host, Michael Royer. You can find me on Twitter at Dynasty_DadFF. And joined, as always, by my co-hosts. Start you with you, John. How's your week going? And, are your playoffs teams still alive?
Well, just as a quick reminder, I'm going by playoff John right now.
That's right. Playoff.
Yeah. Playoff John. Yeah, that's what everyone refers to me this week because it's all about the playoffs, man. And I think we're going to get into this here with you guys, but for me, it is all about getting that ship. Winning championships is more important than winning trades. That's what we've been talking about on this pod, and we're going to get into it. My advice here too is look at all of your lineups, but also look at where your opponent's lineups are stacking up. Are you the favorite? Are you the underdog? If you're the dog, you're probably going to look at playing some of those upside players, the guys that can hit the big plays. If you're the fave, you're going with those consistent high floor guys. So analyze all the matchups, leave it all on the field, baby, and then have fun with it. I found myself like already sweating some of my matchups during week 15. I'm like sweating it out already, looking at everything. But don't just remember to have some fun. And you got this far, so enjoy it.
That's the hard part this time of year, right? We're watching the games, and there's even a little bit more, anxiety and excitement, and just watching it. Like you're getting there, and you're like, this play has to happen, that play has to happen, and it's really exciting for my kids. I run a league for all my kids, and my oldest won the first 3 years, and last year my youngest won. Now my daughter's in the championship they're having a 2-round championship with my middle son, and they're sitting here yelling at the TV, yelling for Tyreek Hill, yelling for, and it was fun, right? Like that's why we did this. That's why we originally got into this, and that's something to remember. I mean, yeah there's money on the line. Yeah, there's some eternal glory, if we want to say, but it's supposed to be fun. So if you're not enjoying it, let it change it up a little bit. Think of your perspective on things, because you can't help but be passionate about fantasy football, right? A little money ball. And joining us as always, Mung, how are things going with you? How are your playoff teams looking? And, what's going on with you this week?
Hey, what's going on, guys? As always, you can find me on Twitter at FFA_Mung. That's MENG. And honestly, I haven't looked too much yet at week 15. I've stayed on top of the news, but I've been wrapping Christmas presents. It's a busy time of year, not just football related, but at the same time, I'm keeping my eye on some lesser known guys. I think a philosophical debate that often happens in the playoffs is the start your studs crowd versus the look at the matchups crowd. And I will say that it's a different situation depending on the players and depending on the matchups. No two situations are ever the same. It's really dependent on the individual specifics, but I do lean the matchups. So I think there are some guys this week who really have very little name value, but could end up being league winners or at least get you the title game. I mean, guys like Tyron Johnson, Chad Hansen, if Brandon Cooks is out again, Jeff Wilson against the Cowboys. These are going to be some tough lineup decisions that you're going to be needing to make. And I was just talking to a buddy yesterday that I would probably start Jeff Wilson Jr. over Ezekiel Elliott this week.
Ooh, I like that. It's tough because, like, for me, I was like, I almost lost my one matchup because I benched Miles Sanders, and he went off. It's tough in those situations because you always want to play your studs, but this time of year, you got to go with the hot hand. You got to go with what's working. And you said it's Christmas time, and you're wrapping presents. So, I got to unwrap a little bit of present here before we jumped on the air. I'm checking my email, and all of a sudden, today, and we talk about this all the time, guys. We say, know your league mates, go out there, use your group chat forums. And I just said, with the Christian McCaffrey news, and let's start with that. I mean, Christian McCaffrey is out for this week. So if you're in week 15, you are not going to have Christian McCaffrey. If you listen to this podcast, you already have Mike Davis. You're welcome. I posted out there today, FF Day Trader, definitely got to go out there and follow, said, what are some things you're rooting for? And this morning I said 8 of my 11 Dynasty teams have Christian McCaffrey on it. So I had my fingers crossed, right? I was like, I need him. but 7 out of those 8 teams I have Mike Davis on, and then 2 other ones. So I have Mike Davis everywhere. And you guys know, Mike Davis went out there. He put up 29 points this past week. I mean, Mike Davis is a rock solid RB2, and it's a great option. So with McCaffrey out, I just put in my group chat, hey guys, I'm shopping Christian McCaffrey. Let's see what we can do. Thinking I was going to get some type of team wanting to rebuild where they might have Zeke or something like that and really just try to, wow me or do something like that. So the guy I'm playing this week, shout out to Mike, he's a great guy, something in the name, but he sends me a message and he goes, Derrick Henry for Christian McCaffrey. Now I have Christian McCaffrey. He's got Derrick Henry. I'm the 1 seed, he's the 3 seed, and he's basically willing to invest Derrick Henry, just to get Christian McCaffrey and essentially forfeit the game. If you look at my roster, you're looking at, I got Matt Ryan, I got Aaron Rodgers, I got Dalvin Cook. It's an older roster. So I'm like, I got to take this deal. I mean, it feels like I'm losing, but when you guys play fantasy football, there's one thing you got to keep in mind.
This is what's great about sports. This is what the greatest thing about sports is. You play to win the game. Hello? You play.
I love it. Like we it's kind of our dad joke memoirs, but you guys play to win the game. I'm thinking to myself, okay, one side, I don't take this Derrick Henry deal and he beats me and I just flushed $600 down the drain. Or do I try to win and hope Christian McCaffrey comes back next week? I want to talk a little bit about, do we think Christian McCaffrey is coming back and our mentality? I mean, first, let's talk about Christian McCaffrey. Do you guys believe that he does come back? I mean, we're looking at, he's already been ruled out for week 15. Christian McCaffrey is not available for your lineups. Week 16 and 17, is it worth the Panthers to bring him back out? Is a franchise type player to come back for 2 games where we've only had him for 3 games this year. 3 games from Christian McCaffrey, and his value has not dipped at all. Saquon missed time, that value dipped hard. And I know we're talking about his second injury now, but John, is Christian McCaffrey going to come back? Is that somebody we should be banking on having in our lineup for the championship if we make it there?
Yeah, I actually am now leaning to that he does not come back. I'm just getting all the vibes that are coming out of there. They have nothing really to play for. So I don't know. It's a bit of a risky move, but I'll start with number 1. I don't think he's actually going to come back. Number 2, I still think that despite everything, he's still the RB1 in fantasy. And I do think that you will hate yourself, cry yourself to sleep if you make this trade and you do not win it. But like you said, and like I said to open it up, winning championships is more important than winning the trades. As painful as this is to depart with overall potential best player in Dynasty, best running back in Dynasty, I do think you actually do it. And that's always my mentality, is go for the win. It is all about the win. So, yeah, I could do it. I'd do it, man.
Yeah.
Get that cowbell.
There is no more, absolute on any trade where we're talking about trading, the future for the championship. I mean, we're talking about trading the best player other than, said Patrick Mahomes for, a step down for Derrick Henry. What I did was I threw it out there on Twitter. So we trust you guys. We love interacting with you guys. It's over 200 votes in the first hour, and 78% of you guys said, take the title shot with Henry. I put, if your opponent offered you Henry for CMC, essentially giving you the title, would you rather Christian McCaffrey or Henry and a free ride to that title game? And you guys jumped out there. Couple names, you had a couple of comments here. Strong Style Ninja put Henry over CMC all day when you're talking playoffs. At Gridiron Hub Oz put, I know you got the memes ready in case you do win this one. Next one, Sean at Sean Rames fan says, this is the reason you win. Worry about next year. And my mentality right now, and I did accept the trade, is that I'm going to go win it, and then I'm going to make some moves. I feel like I have enough guys around there where I would rather win the championship than run a risk of not having Christian McCaffrey the entire year and losing out on that money where I'm going to regret it the entire year long. Mung, let's talk about some of the situations you're in here in week 15, or as long as this situation, are you willing to move off Christian McCaffrey for a nice payday, maybe even more so than Derrick Henry? Most of the time, someone's not trading you that said player when they're playing you. It's usually someone that's out of the playoffs. So what would it take to get Christian McCaffrey off of you?
Yeah, I mean, I think you have to take that deal because honestly, I would say my spirit animal is Bruce Arians. I completely 100% agree with, you got to risk it for the biscuit. And we're in the semifinal round. You got 2 games left to win. And what are you doing if you're looking to next year right now? Because we have no idea what's going to happen next year. We have no idea what's going to happen in 2022. I mean, going into this year, I think I've mentioned this team before, but I had a team with Saquon Barkley and George Kittle and Michael Thomas and all these guys who ended up not doing anything for me. So, Christian McCaffrey is still my 101 in non-superflex dynasty formats, but at the same time, you're risking a little bit of a value loss, but you're greatly increasing those odds of a championship.
I've been talking about Derrick Henry for weeks. We've been talking about it on here, and this isn't the first deal I've made. I think I have a bit of a problem. But my other league, I actually dealt Saquon for him straight, and I beat the guy by the 40-point difference that Henry put up. And I'm like, when I did it, I looked at my roster before, and I was like, man, this thing is sexy, right? But I didn't win last year. I didn't win at all because it looks sexy. Get it done. If you guys got to do that deal, yes, it could hurt in the future. But all of us here, we advocate making trades regularly. We're volume traders. We say, hey, go to your league every week. And this isn't no different. Right now, you should try to be making trades. If you're a playoff team, try to add that last piece. Go get that Darren Waller. Go get that Derrick Henry. Go get that Lamar Jackson. Pay up and win it and enjoy it. If you're out of the playoffs, now's the time where you should be selling those pieces to try to solidify your roster, start moving, try to move Julio Jones, try to move, Todd Gurley, if that's even possible, try to move some of those players before their value hits that cliff, because once we get to the offseason, those values are going to drop even further. So, for me, I know it doesn't feel right. It's kind of in between, but it ended up being a cowbell. You had to hit it. I'm so proud of my girlfriend. We're here at Target. And I got to share this. So we're sitting here in line, and I'm like sharing this information. So all you guys out there, when you talk fantasy with your girlfriend or your wife, they kind of look the other way. And she looks over at me and she goes, Mike, that's a smash accept. And I was like, all right, I got myself a keeper. We gotta roll with that. Speaking of keepers,
it's a proud moment there.
What's that?
Moment. That's a proud moment.
It is a proud moment, I love it.
She might be a keeper.
Yeah. She might be, and Dynasty is all about those keeper leagues. I think we're playing the long haul instead of the short game on that one. So we're looking right now at rookies that pay, right? I mean, this rookie class, we talked about it. We've been talking about it all year, where this class is phenomenal, right? And guys are just popping up, and they're going to be able to win you titles, where we've been saying, hold on to these guys. Don't move them. The first guy that I think everyone was really frustrated at in the beginning of the season, he wasn't getting the touches, is Cam Akers. Cam Akers has really come on with the usage over the last couple of weeks, to a point where, Sean Payton almost is like rubbing it in our faces if we traded it, right? He just totally turned the keys over to Cam Akers, and he has not disappointed. I mean, he's been putting up 20-plus fantasy points each of the last 2 weeks. He looks fantastic. Mung, I know you were a little higher on Akers than I was in the preseason format. He's the only rookie running back I do not own. I have tons of Taylor, tons of Dobbin. I have Robinson on almost every single team I have. I did not get a single Cam Akers because I wasn't quite as high, because I felt that top tier of 4 running backs, and then I had CeeDee Lamb above him all the time. So I was taking Lamb above Akers, unlike a lot of other people. What have you seen so far from Akers, and are you a believer in putting him into your fantasy playoff lineup?
Yeah, I think there's still a little bit of risk, just because we could still see a bit of a committee. But at this point, it seems like Akers has that top role solidified in Los Angeles. I mean, based on what we saw against New England, he was getting the bulk of the carries, got some receiving work as well. I mean, he gets the Jets this week, Seattle next week. Both of these run defenses are vulnerable. I absolutely think you're starting him. I mean, it depends on your options, of course, but it's hard to see anyone benching him unless you got like 3 other top 5 running backs.
Yeah, 29 for 171, and he put up 20 plus points without a touchdown again. I mean, he has looked fantastic on the field. And it's an offense that's, kind of clicking here a little bit over the last couple of weeks. John, where do you have Cam Akers relative to the other guys right now? We talked about this before we jumped on air. These running backs are so good. It's like splitting hairs. But have you moved Cam Akers up at all?
Yeah, I have a little bit, and I thankfully I do have some Cam Akers shares, especially in any of my rebuild and first year punt teams. I really like the kid coming out of Florida State, and he just needed some time to develop in that system with McVay. He needed the touches, like you said, and he showed what he could do once he gets them. And I don't even know that he was fully healthy. So when you put all that together, he showed me almost 200 yards in that game. So I've actually now moved Akers ahead of Robinson, and I got to tell you, it's really hard to rank those top 7 rookie running backs. I want them all, but I'm kind of even debating Akers versus Dobbins, Akers versus CEH from what he's showing me here down the stretch, and so that's one that we'll probably keep talking about on the pod for sure. But I've actually moved him ahead of some other like veteran running backs as well. So I think his value is clearly on the rise. And what you want to look at too in Dynasty is what players do you think are going to gain in value over the offseason? And any of these like a formula for increased value in the offseason is rookie running backs that get hot down the stretch. Akers, Jonathan Taylor now, Gibson, Swift. I mean, all these guys are going to be rocket ships heading into next season.
Yeah, I mean, with the way guys end seasons, obviously translates into the value going in, and going into the offseason. If he has another 2 games here where he puts up over 100 plus yards, that value is going to skyrocket, and it's, if you believe in Akers more, I mean, I feel like we're splitting hairs. I mean, we talked before we jumped on here. If Taylor and Swift are right up there, Edwards-Hilaire's up there, Dobbins, everybody has their guy, right? So if you don't have your guy out of this group, I feel like you can move around in this tier. And if you believe in your talent evaluation, if you believe in your guy more than another guy, make some of them moves. I mean, if you're unsure about James Robinson long-term, you love what he's done for your Dynasty team, but long-term, make that trade and maybe get James Robinson a little bit for Cam Akers, and if you believe in Clyde Edwards-Helaire and he hasn't been showing exactly what you think he's capable of, make some of those kind of moves. And I feel like that's how Dynasty's winning is done, is sometimes it doesn't have to be that monster trade where you trade down, but you can trade within a tier where you believe in a guy and get a little bit extra on top. The guy that I believed in, and he was my 101, and shame on me for, dropping off a little bit. And I traded a few shares of Jonathan Taylor. I feel like I got really solid returns, but Jonathan Taylor looked fantastic this week, right? I mean, he almost single-handedly knocked me out of a couple of rounds here in the playoffs. Luckily, I was able to, ward those guys off. But Jonathan Taylor looked like what we wanted all year long, right, John? I mean, he looked fantastic on Sunday.
Oh, it was my favorite moment in Week 14 when he broke that 62-yard touchdown. I jumped off the couch. I'm like, yeah, let's go. And he just outran everybody. I mean, frankly, you go back and watch the play. Huge hole that we all could have probably run through. Yep. But that's not the point. He outran everybody. He had the size and the speed. I mean, he left everybody in the dust on that play. And then he scored again later in the game. I mean, and what the problem was for so long, right? It wasn't getting the carries. It didn't look like he had the confidence of Reich and the staff there. But he's got the workload now. 20 carries for 150 yards, 2 touchdowns, averaging 7.5 per carry, had a couple of receptions. We've shown what he can do in the air as well. And so, yeah, he's showing why we hyped him. And by the way, he gets Houston this week. So this is a guy that it's going to, to your point, Mike, money this week, money in the future. I have JT as my rookie running back 1, just ahead of Swift in my rankings right now.
Yeah, and I saw in the Dynasty Trade Calculator group chat, someone was like, McCaffrey, I don't have him this week, I'm going to trade him for Jonathan Taylor in the 107. Similar type situation we're talking about with Henry. Now this has potential to be an insulated trade where, he can increase in value here. But I mean, Jonathan Taylor, we talked about this, one of our earlier episodes where he had the number one strength of schedule throughout. Now he gets Houston. He's got a tough matchup week 16 against Pittsburgh. But Jonathan Taylor could be a guy who gets you into that championship run. Mung, are you believing in Jonathan Taylor now? Are you willing to put him into that a tier above the rest of those rookies? Or are you still a Clyde Edwards-Helaire guy?
I don't know that he's a tier above. I think all these top 5 or 6 or maybe even 7 running backs, I mean, we've gotten spoiled by this rookie class because I feel like all of them have exceeded expectations to a point. And, you mentioned Pittsburgh in week 16, but even that's not as scary with Bud Dupree out now. They've had some injuries on defense, and you would think that they would rather see a lot of Jonathan Taylor than put out Phillip Rivers against TJ Watt there.
Yeah. Another rookie that really jumped off the screen, right? I mean, none of us were expecting Jalen Hurts to play like this, right? I mean, we thought we'd get some running plays. We thought we'd get some flash, but he reinvigorated that offense there for Philadelphia. We saw play calling that really tailored towards what he's able to do. 117 for 30, 167, but that 108 yards on the ground makes him a Konami code. I mean, he looked great. And I think the Saints defense was trying to figure out, how do we stop this? And his schedule is not going to get easier than the Saints, but he looked the part of a guy that I want to put in my dynasty lineup. I have one, I'm in a super duper flex, you can start 3 quarterbacks. I'm going to throw him out there this week. I think he showed enough with a 25+ point performance, especially if you're getting points per carry. Jalen Hurts looked good, and I think I'm comfortable starting him as my QB2 in certain situations going into week 15, the semifinals, John.
Yeah, I have to say I was shocked. I mean, shocker special that they come in and beat the Saints like that. And I got to thinking about it a little bit more. Yeah, for sure. Nobody had this. I mean, I saw some folks that were a little more bullish on Hurts than I was. I'll have to admit it. I didn't expect him to go over 100 on the ground against the Saints D. But, just thinking about it more, Mike, and Mom, I'd love your thoughts on this too, is there's not a lot of film on him. They don't really know how to play him yet. They have to respect his ground game. He's getting enough done in the air. And like I said last week, I mean, he is that gamer that he looks sharper with the offense right now than Wentz did. So I got to tell you, I think I'm kind of open to him, and I'm really thinking about more down the road. It looks like he really could be a big thing, especially in Superflex. So I'm going to continue to watch him very closely.
I think he's a player I'm not going to own a lot of. Like, I'm not going to pay up now at this point.
Oh, no. Yeah, I'm with you on that. Absolutely
if you
right.
took him in the second round of your Superflex drafts, congratulations. You got a great value in there. And I feel like he's going to, perform very well early on. I don't think he's a guy that long-term is still a guaranteed for the answer, right? Like, everyone's out there saying, hey, my dad bought a bunch of Jalen Hurts rookie cards. Jared from Dynasty Refinery is like, I just got a bunch of, Jalen Hurts autograph cards, and they're just want to believe in Philadelphia so much. But I don't think we can just say after one start that it's a guarantee that this guy's the second coming. I'm hearing a lot of people on Twitter saying he's just like Kyler Murray. No, Kyler Murray has a rocket arm. Jalen Hurts still struggled to make all the throws, right? And he looked great on the ground. But Mung, what did you see from watching the film here on Jalen Hurts?
Yeah, I certainly didn't predict the upset, but I will say I stayed away from that game in all my parlays. So I wasn't feeling great about the Saints there. And, really for Hurts, as you guys said, there's a lack of film. But at the same time, we can't discount what he was able to do, because this was the first game since early in the year that Philadelphia didn't allow a single sack. And a lot of that was on Hurts because he did get pressured, but he was able to escape. He was able to throw the ball away. And really, he just managed the game a lot better than Wentz has earlier this year. And, I mean, we'll see how he develops as a passer. But, so much of fantasy for the quarterback position is getting those rushing yards. And then also, if you're in 4-point passing touchdown leagues, those extra rushing touchdowns, those extra 2 points per touchdown, I mean, that's huge. So he can certainly be a difference maker. And it would not shock me if he finished next year as a top 12 fantasy quarterback.
Yeah, I like that. I mean, I think when you want a quarterback, you want that rushing floor of being able to give you 6 points a week, and he has the floor so far of that easily, and I feel like you throw in a couple rushing touchdowns and he has the ability to get that done. I don't think he's like a long-term quarterback for the league, from my own personal viewpoints and the way I've seen him, but he is exciting. There's no denying that. I mean, he gave that offense around him they got a shot in the arm. Miles Sanders, doing a little bit more RPO. He looked great. And to me though, it's the Philly play calling. They went back to the run. They went back to some simple things, and Miles Sanders looked phenomenal. Miles Sanders was someone that people wrote off for dead, and his value was dying. I mean, it was slowly leaking out. Is Miles Sanders someone that you guys should be going out there and buying? I mean, he looked the part. He's been fantastic all year with his yards per carry. It's just been a matter of that offensive line.
Yeah, for me, I want to see a little bit more of the Philly offense and how Sanders is going to fit in. Like you said, Mike, beyond just the 1 week sample size here with this new offense. But you're right. I mean, Sanders definitely kind of came alive. We were all down on him from the previous couple of weeks. He wasn't getting the touches, just didn't look nearly as good. The whole offense is out of sync. But yeah, I mean, he ripped off that 80-yarder. He's always capable of that big play. So I think for me, he's still in that conversation of like a low RB1, high RB2 range. And because his value dipped, you might still be able to get some value there or during the off season, see if that's a guy you can scoop up for a little bit cheaper. So yeah, I like keeping an eye on that. By the way, how about some of these Eagles receivers, right? Jalen Reagor, you could probably still get him for very cheap.
Ooh, you talked about Reagor while Mung had the headphones off, man. That was his guy.
Yeah,
right?
just hyping Reagor here as another guy that to me his value has dipped way more than it should have. And again, I mean, we'll have to see how this plays out, but I'm keeping my eye on that one for sure right there.
Yeah, it's some new exciting in moments here in Philadelphia. Also a little exciting in Denver this week. I mean, a lot of people in the community have really written off Drew Lock. He was a very polarizing player. He goes out 21 for 27, 280, and 4 passing touchdowns in another comeback win against Carolina. A pretty solid Carolina defense. And KJ Hamler popped off with 2 long receptions, 2 for 86 and 2 touchdowns. Tim Patrick, another touchdown. Jerry Jeudy still seems to be struggling to get his with Drew Lock. A lot of people in the community are super low on Drew Lock, and we've had some injuries. We've had some things that really haven't gone his way. Is Drew Lock worthy of being, he's not a guy I want to play going into the playoffs, but is he worthy of being your QB2 on your super flex team, or are we just more of a wait and see? I'm hearing a lot of different polarizing things. Some people are like, I think next year he's going to make that jump that we thought he was going to be and be that post-hype sleeper. Mung, have you been watching a decent amount of type on Drew Lock? Is he someone that you believe in?
Yeah, it was pretty high on Drew Lock in the offseason going into this year. We have to remember, too, that one, their offensive line is really struggling this year. And 2, he has missed some time. So that lack of continuity certainly doesn't help. And, I wish I could remember now. I would give credit where credit's due, but I think it was one of the Broncos websites that one of the writers, the quote that I liked so much was that Drew Lock has all the skills. He has the accuracy and the poise in the pocket at times. All he needs to do is stop playing hero ball. We saw against Kansas City, he went for that shot early. It got picked off, and there was no need. They were tied at that point. So if he can continue to just kind of calm himself down early in the game, not necessarily take those chances when he doesn't need to, then we could see him succeed.
The other guy, and we'll talk a little bit there in Carolina. Obviously, we talked about Mike Davis a little bit before, but I mean, 11 for 51, 2 touchdowns on the ground, 5 receptions, 42 yards. If you have him on a non-playoff team, cash out. This is the time to try to get what you can from Mike Davis. And if you are a playoff team and you're trying to fill in, this is the time. I mean, there is he has the ability to get you to week 16. If I believe Christian McCaffrey doesn't come back. And if he doesn't, Mike Davis is a solid option for week 16. But it's worth giving up a late second to get you into that title round. That's not the kind of capital that you're going to regret going forward. Another quarterback that really balled out this week. A lot of people have been super down on him, obviously, for several years now. But Mitch Trubisky, 267 yards, 3 touchdowns. And I got 2 or 3 DMs this week saying, should I start Mitch Trubisky this week? I mean, John, can you fathom a scenario where you want Trubisky out there in the playoffs? Or am I, he's had several good weeks here in a row.
I'm still having such a hard time, taking that seriously. For my playoff teams, I'm having a hard time trusting Trubisky. But I was playing against him actually in a couple of leagues, and I kept looking at the stats, and I'm like, wow, he's piling it up here. I think the problem was the Texans truly fell apart in that game.
Yes.
And so, yeah, I'm not going to completely write him off, but I think I'm going to attribute some of it to the Texans. And I think, again, the Bears, to me, have to make some major changes to the staff, certainly to the offense. And I think that they may actually consider some of the QBs coming out. We'll see. So I personally wouldn't feel good about playing him in the playoffs, but I have to say, kind of raised my eyebrows a little bit, and he's shown me a few things there that caught my attention. I have to agree with that piece of it.
Yeah, I mean, he's coming off 27 2 weeks ago, 18, and then 33.6 this past week. The real exciting part of that is Allen Robinson's alive again, right? Allen Robinson, someone that you can definitely be buying. Where I got an offer today where someone wanted Chris Godwin, and they were like, "I'll give you Allen Robinson plus." And if you believe in those kind of scenarios, that's how you win a championship. Chris Godwin is a guy who, has had his ups and downs here. I love Chris Godwin. We know Mung loves all them Buccaneers wide receivers. But let's talk a little bit about Allen Robinson. We have a situation here where he's going to be a free agent coming up. This is a guy that you can get right now, I believe, that can take you to a championship game, but he's going to get a value bump, I believe. I feel like he's going to pick where he wants to go. He's going to go to a contender. And if he gets in that right situation, the skill set for Allen Robinson, he's a top 10 dynasty wide receiver if he was in the right situation over the last couple of years. Now he's getting a little bit older, but I feel like he gets in that situation where he gets a wide receiver 1 role like Stephon Diggs with a decent quarterback, and we have instant value bump here on Allen Robinson, Monk.
Yeah, and I don't know why he's always been undervalued, because even with Foles and Trubisky and whoever it is throwing him the ball, back in the day it was Blake Bortles, it doesn't matter, because as long as he gets the targets, he's going to do the most that he can with them. For me, he's in that, top 10 dynasty wide receiver range. I don't really see a huge difference between him and Diggs and Hopkins, and for some reason you can get him cheaper. So if you can, I absolutely would.
Yeah. Most of your major websites, my ranking, I had him around that 15 range. Most major websites have him 17 to 18, 17, 18, 19. And he's just too good for that, right? I mean, the situation might not be ideal, but the guy can play. We got to get him out there. Moving over to the Green Bay Detroit game. And I want to talk about this a little bit because John's been tooting this horn. He's been pushing Aaron Rodgers. Aaron Rodgers is a guy that's going to get you to the promised land. We want to talk about trades that get that done. I got another one in my inbox right now. We talked about this in the Joe Burrow episode. I am in the semifinals. The guy that's not in it offered me Aaron Rodgers and Mike Davis for Joe Burrow. Break it down here for me a little bit, guys. The rest of my team is super young. It's that team where I took over and it's loaded with rookies. I mean, but I'm struggling at quarterback. I have Stafford. I have Tua. Tua gets, New England, which we know that is a killer for rookies. Stafford sounds like he is out. Is this a move that you make that you'd be comfortable with picking up Aaron Rodgers? Mung, we'll start with you first because John and I talked about this a little bit backstage, but would you be willing to move off Joe Burrow for Aaron Rodgers and a Mike Davis and a chance to get to the title?
Yes, and I think you're losing a little value here. I would try to get a second on top or something along those lines. But, at the end of the day, this comes back to that McCaffrey-Henry trade. Rodgers gets Detroit this week, Tennessee next week. Both are beautiful matchups. As you said, you have Stafford who may not even play. Tua could struggle against the Patriots here. And then Mike Davis has been on a tear. So, I mean, if you think you have a legit shot at the title, that's a move where you're going to lose a little value now, but that's a risk that I would take.
Yeah, it's unfortunate. There's two guys there that I'm mixing. I'm missing Antonio Gibson this week too. So, John, let's start with you on this. Let's talk about the trade a little bit, and then let's talk about Antonio Gibson. You know, we've loved what he's done on the field this year, but it sounds like he's going to be out again this week.
Yeah, starting with that trade, I would do it too. And again, winning championships is more important than winning the trade. Do you win that trade? I'd say you do if you win a championship because of it. Straight up on value, Mung's right. No, you may have thrown a little bit away. So
right there it is. Accepted.
Nice. Live, accept on
live,
air.
Accepted. I wanted to smash it, but like
I would have
like
liked to see more smash.
You don't want to break the laptop, smashing it
no,
hard.
We'll work on that. But yeah. I do love it because of your roster construction. I think that, number one, I think Stafford is out. I mean, if he's playing, he with the rib situation, it's not going to be pretty. So Stafford's probably out. Tua has a really bad matchup this week. In fact, I am sitting Tua if I can against New England. Belichick, I think, is going to scheme something and has had a lot of success versus rookie quarterback. So here you are in the playoffs. You just gave yourself perhaps I don't think this is hyperbole, might be the best quarterback for the playoff stretch here. I mean, you look at Mahomes, maybe you could argue Mahomes be better. He's got Atlanta in week 16, but I love what Rodgers is doing. I'm hoping to ride Rodgers to a championship in my home Dynasty league that I'm most excited about. And so I think you make the move, cash in the chips, leave it all on the field. So yeah, done. That's
now I feel a little bit better. Rodgers and Tua and his quarterbacks are actually, believe it or not, he is in the semifinals with Trubisky and Baker. So I feel like I should be able to get an advantage there and work that out.
If I can be selfish here for just a moment and get your guys' advice, which I don't often ask for, but I trust your guys' opinion. In a one quarterback league, I've got Rodgers against, who is it? Carolina this week, right? And then I also have the option of Kyler Murray against the Eagles. You sticking with your boy Rodgers, John?
I would play Rodgers versus Carolina there. And I've been actually, of course, doing all the analysis, looking at a lot of other rankings as well. And pretty consistently I'm seeing Rodgers over Murray. And Carolina defense is allowing, they're 29th in terms of quarterback fantasy points allowed. Murray's got Philly, who's more middle of the road, kind of mid-tier 14th overall. So, yeah, I would run with Mr. Rodgers.
I mean, 4 touchdowns, no picks to Drew Lock, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, if you're not
it's hard to argue with that. Exactly. Yep.
Yeah, I have him as a top 3 play this week. Him, Mahomes, and Lamar Jackson. I mean, Lamar Jackson gets Jacksonville here. Kyler gets Philadelphia. The defense has looked a little bit better over the last couple of weeks, and they're 20th most when it comes to giving points to the quarterback. Let's talk about Lamar Jackson a little bit. We've been talking about trading for him because his schedule is really juicy.
Nice.
Nice.
Pun intended.
A little bit. I think OBJ was messaging.
I don't know if that was intended or not. Yeah.
He's like, "How was the bathroom break there?" Get it all out. But Lamar Jackson, if you guys didn't know, kind of pulled a little bit. Paul Pierce here went for a little bathroom break, but he dominated. And I went to bed at halftime thinking that game was just boring. And like many people, turned it back on and saw the final score was in the 40s. Lamar Jackson was running all over the place. I mean, he had 2 rushing touchdowns when he had 3 completions. He was not, getting things done through the air, but he started running again. J.K. Dobbins looked good, and that Ravens offense started to click a little bit. And on the flip side, Baker Mayfield looked good. I mean, Baker Mayfield threw, 4 touchdowns again. He has looked pretty solid over the last 3 weeks. Who are you guys, out of those 2, break it down a little bit from what you saw out of the game. We were really down on Baker Mayfield because he had 3 games there where he was sub 10, which is brutal from your super flex position. But there was some weather involved in those games, and Baker has looked solid over the last 3 weeks. John, talk to me about either of these quarterbacks and, what you're willing to – are those guys you're trying to pick up for this title run?
I'm going to say yes on Lamar Jackson and no on Baker Mayfield. Lamar is definitely going to flush the competition here against Jacksonville this week.
Hey-o.
Sorry, I couldn't resist. It's part of our shtick here, both Dynasty dads. Got to get the dad jokes in, but
Yeah,
in all
Lamar,
seriousness,
he's always good with the runs. You know what I mean?
yeah,
Like it's not
yeah,
necessarily. Oh, we missed
he's
the dad
definitely
joke.
had the runs and is good with the runs this past week. But that was quite the moment, wasn't it? Superman moment, comes in on 4th down play, throws a touchdown. That's right up there in terms of like moments in the NFL season. I think we're all going to remember. But yeah, he's got Jacksonville. I think it does get a little bit tougher for him against the Giants in Week 16. Baker, I do agree. I was probably a little bit hard on him. Most of us were a little bit down on him. The weather games. The Browns have looked really good, but I do think that they really want to run the ball first. And Baker still looks erratic at times. That turned into a shootout for whatever reason against Baltimore and field conditions and everything else. I'm just not quite as high on Baker Mayfield. He does have the Giants this week, who, like I said, are a little bit tougher on D. But if I will say this, if you can somehow get to the championship game and you have Baker, you could pick him up cheap. He does have the Jets. So do I even need to tell you why that would be a nice little matchup for him?
Not at all. Moving over to Tennessee, Jacksonville. I mean, we've been talking about Derrick Henry nonstop, but 26 for 215 and 2 touchdowns. He's one of only, I believe, 6 running backs in history to have 2 200-yard games, in the same season. The guy has just been a stud. And he's someone that I believe we've been talking about that's going to win you guys championships. If you can go do it, do it. Want to hit on A.J. Brown. I know, John, last week you say, hey, where's he been? A.J. Brown bounced back 7 for 112 and a touchdown. And with Jonnu Smith, just like Mung said, Jonnu Smith came back and Corey Davis kind of took a back seat. I feel like, Corey Davis has had a great story this year, but that's something definitely worth monitoring there. A.J. Brown looked healthy again, and that's someone that he had a couple injuries there. Even in the game, he came out, but he looked good.
Yeah, and I think that catch, that one-handed catch that he had in the flea flicker is probably like a top 10 catch on the season. If you didn't see, I'd go back and watch. The kid has just incredible skills.
Yeah. And on the other side of the ball, Jacksonville, Gardner Minshew comes back in, 178 yards and a touchdown. People are asking me, hey, Dad, James Robinson struggled, right? James Robinson was, 12 for 67, but he had a 60-yard touchdown called back. I think James Robinson's that kid you keep rolling with him. I don't see any scenario where, unless you are absolutely loaded at the running back position, that you move off of James Robinson. He's been trustworthy all year long. Keep rolling him out there. I have one league. I might actually have to start Gardner Minshew this week. My choices are I give up a 21 first to get Jared Goff or Kirk Cousins, or I roll out there with Gardner Minshew. It's a scary situation when you get into week 15, and we loved Minshew preseason, but now it's a little dicey. The Chiefs versus the Dolphins. Now, this game was the one that I watched with my kids. They were going nuts. Tua looked great, and Mike Gesicki, really the guy that I was, he was my darling of the tight ends there, where I was all about him, and he moved way up. He moved up the charts there as far as where he ranks in the tight ends for the season play. This was a fun game to watch. Did either of you guys get a chance to, just enjoy all the offense?
Yeah, and I think there's a lot of fantasy relevant stuff to be mined from what happened in this game too, because a lot of injuries happened for the Dolphins here. They lost Gesicki to a shoulder dislocation. He's going to be out for at least a few weeks. They lost Shaquem Grant to a hamstring injury, and we don't know yet if Devontae Parker is going to play. I saw he had a leg injury of some sort. I don't know the details on it, but depending on how deep your leagues get, guys like Adam Shaheen and Durham Smythe filling in at tight end. The Patriots are tough on them, but if you need a warm body to fill in, they're there for you. And then Lynn Bowden's interesting too. The Raiders gave up on him very early after a month or two after drafting him this offseason. And, with Grant out and possibly Parker as well, again, it's a tough matchup against that New England secondary, but he could see double-digit targets here.
Yeah, and he's available in some of my leagues. He's kind of been out of sight, out of mind, and they were thinking the Raiders cut him, after taking him, I believe, in the 3rd round. There must be a problem there. But, he led the team in targets. He looked good. On the other side of the ball, John, is there a better tight end than Travis Kelce? We just got to throw that in there every single week. I've tried. Right now, there's a guy texting me, and he said, he just got ousted from the playoffs. He said, there is a Travis Kelce sweepstakes all in. What are you guys willing to give?
Get in there, Mike. Get in there. Yeah.
I have Tanyan, I have Ebron, and I have Waller. So I'm like, do I try to move up from Waller, or do I try to really package up those other guys and start throwing some picks in there? Travis Kelce is the Derrick Henry of the tight end. He's the guy that's going to win you that title. Go get him.
Yeah, I think you could almost argue that Travis Kelce is the 2020 fantasy MVP. Yep. He's been such a huge positional advantage, and we talked quite a bit about him, so I'll try not to hype him that much more. But looking down the stretch here, I'd love all my team's chances when I have Travis Kelce, and I have one team where I have Kelce and Waller, and it's such a huge advantage every week. I'm just loving that whole setup. So yeah, I'm really looking forward to watching Kelce down the stretch and hopefully leading me to a couple of championships. But I have to come back to Tua. I mean, Mike, you and I were hyping him. We're talking Tua time. This was really, for me, where he showed us what his full capabilities are, where he really started to air it out a lot more. He was that gamer, showed the poise, making plays happen with very limited weapons. I mean, down to like wide receiver 4 and 5, and still nearly led a full comeback against arguably the best team in the NFL. So that's the Tua that we believe in. And wow, I mean, I have a lot of shares, but I'm looking to potentially get even more. Imagine what happens when they add a wide receiver in, on day 1 of the draft, and give him some other weapons, give him a little more time in the system, off-season OTAs. This could be fun, Mike.
I know we've talked about how the Dolphins, they've played their dynasty team right. That they didn't add the running back, and they added on the O-line, the D-line. The defense looks pretty solid, and we've talked about that a little bit in between there. Add in one of these wide receivers, maybe 2 of these wide receivers from another great class, and Tua's value is just going to continue to rise. We talked about not necessarily starting him this week against New England. Speaking of New England, let's talk about their former quarterback, Tom Brady. I saw Mung, you had it on Twitter. You're like, I believe at early part of the game, Tom Brady just was not showing up. Finished the game. I traded a 2021 first in our 2 quarterback, or our double copy Dynasty Refinery Listener League 2, ended up being the 108 to get Tom Brady, because we talked about really trying to trade that late first to get Tom Brady because of his schedule. I mean, Minnesota was very, very appealing matchup. He gets Atlanta this week, another great matchup. Talk to me a little bit about Tom Brady, and where do we go with the wide receivers here? I mean, Chris Godwin, I am the biggest Chris Godwin fan there is, Mike Evans as well. But do we comfortably roll them out here into the playoffs? Is it a scenario where I'm not comfortable with Chris Godwin, and that hurts me because the talent is there? Yes, he's coming off the broken finger, but help me out here with the Bucs. You're a resident guy here. Are you rolling them all out?
Yeah, I am. But one real quick note, you guys are super high on Tua, and it's not impossible that we see him reunited with Devontae Smith next year. And that would be something really fun.
Waddle.
Yeah.
Jalen Waddle too could go to Miami. And they hit some big plays together.
Why not both?
So yeah.
Yeah, get them both.
Yeah, take them both. Let's do it. Yeah. Hey, Tampa Bay does have Atlanta though, right, Mong, this week?
Yeah, and the other reason that I am bullish on both Brady and the wide receivers this week is because of that pinky injury for Ronald Jones. He had surgery earlier today, and it doesn't sound like anything major, but at the same time, it could just force them to throw a little bit more because, as we know, the Falcons are better at stopping the run than the pass. We know that they're going to want to try and pick at the weaknesses. And look, it's the Falcons secondary, right? They've played better in recent weeks since they got rid of Dan Quinn, but still, it's not like they've infused that secondary with any talent.
So if you're rolling out here, where do you have Chris Godwin in your weekly ranks? Is he a wide receiver 2, or should we temper it back and expect him more as a wide receiver 3 and hope that he comes out? I mean, we're talking 3 targets for 25 yards, and that's not what people are looking for in their fantasy playoffs.
Yeah, I think Evans is the most secure. I've got him as a high-end wide receiver 2 for this week. And then Brown and Godwin, their target shares are a little bit riskier. So I've got them in that risk-reward wide receiver 3 category, not quite in that wide receiver 2 range.
Yeah, I'm going to throw out some names here, guys, and you tell me if you would start them over Chris Godwin, because I'm getting a lot of questions about Chris Godwin on Twitter. Deontay Johnson.
I'd go with Godwin over Johnson and the Dropskis right now.
I would too.
But it's pretty close.
All right. Brandon Cooks.
Godwin
easily over Brandon Cooks.
All right.
Is Brandon Cooks even playing?
Let's test it a little bit more here. All right. Let's go. This is going to sound crazy. Cole Beasley.
Yeah, I think the Denver pass defense is actually pretty solid. In fact, they're near the top, and so I would give the slight edge to Godwin there.
I would actually go Beasley.
All right.
Denver's been good this year, but that was before AJ Boye got suspended, and then their third or fourth string cornerback just got hurt last week too, so they got no one.
Yeah, so that could be an interesting one. And Cole Beasley's a guy where you could buy on the cheap as a wide receiver 3.
Oh, yeah.
He's been rock solid. I mean, the guy
Gabriel
has put up
he could
numbers.
big week this week.
Yeah, I mean, we're looking at 28 against San Francisco. 9 was one of his worst performances this past week. But he's just accumulating targets. And then the last one I want to ask is Godwin or Brandon Ayuk?
Ayuk's a top 10 guy for me.
Yep.
Yeah, Ayuk against Dallas with all the targets he's about to get with Devo out, with Kittle out. That's an easy one.
Ayuk's a borderline top 5 guy this week.
I like it. You know, Brandon Ayuk is another guy that people are talking about a lot on Twitter, and they're trying to figure out what kind of value here. I mean, we got him, if you did it right, you got him in the second round, mid, even to late second round, and he has excelled this year. I mean, he looks amazing. He has done fantastic things with his playing ability, with his style, with Debo out. Is a lot of this coming on because of Kittle not being there as that primary target, or is Brandon Ayuk the talent that good that we should still buy in, John?
Yeah, he's talented, and I wasn't high enough on Ayuk, so I don't have as many shares as I'd like, but I would tap the brakes a bit. Okay, the Shanahan offense absolutely likes to spread the ball around. Frankly, the number one target heading into next season is going to be George Kittle, and we know that they love Debo, and they will get Debo targets. So you really have to temper your expectations on Ayuk just a bit for all those. He is not going to get the kind of targets that he did this past week, which I believe was something crazy, like 16 targets, 10 receptions, something in that range.
Yeah. That's not, to me, sustainable on a week-to-week basis. But the talent is there. He can hit the big plays. He can jump over defenders. So, I think it's basically arrow up on that guy, but just be careful you're not overpaying for him. Yeah, I mean, we're talking about since week 7, his worst performance is 17.5 fantasy points. I mean, that is from a rookie if we did not have Justin Jefferson and CeeDee Lamb, Brandon Ayuk would be getting a lot more, he would be getting a lot more play, right? And if we wasn't in San Francisco, which is in a poor team this year, he is a guy that has not hit the radar yet of what he's actually been doing. And if he ends up finishing the season the way that he has over the last couple of weeks, we have a star in the making. We have a guy who's going to be a rock solid wide receiver 2 that has some serious skills, and he gets Dallas and Arizona over the final 2 weeks. So Brandon Ayuk is another guy that I definitely think is worth going out. I
think Ayuk's definitely a league winner rest of the season with Samuel out, but I will say that I do think he's a sell high long term. Kind of echoing what John said, Kittle and Samuel are still there. And really this scenario kind of reminds me of the Travis Fulgham hype, because mid-season Philadelphia had no one else healthy, right? And the talent is nowhere near the same, right? Ayuk's clearly a much better player overall, so you're not selling, for anything, but I'd let him go for a mid-first.
Right on.
So I got my Bills hat on today, and we talked a little bit about Josh Allen last week. I want to talk about who I think is one of the most underrated dynasty wide receivers is Stephon Diggs. I mean, Stephon Diggs tore up that really good Steelers secondary. he is someone that just isn't getting enough play, I think, as well. I think the talent is there. We've wanted him to be an alpha. He is now. And a lot of people in the community, I don't think that value has risen to the amount that it probably should have.
Yeah, we talked about him a little bit, but I've got him, and I'm still trying to figure this out, but somewhere in that wide receiver 5 to 8 range right now. And I think that's probably a little bit higher than most have him.
Yeah, most
but
have
just
him in
him
that
paired
wide
up,
receiver 10 to 12 range. And I feel like
yeah.
we're looking at a guy who is a top 5 wide receiver this year, and he's just
Mhm.
turned 27 years old. I mean, he is in the
Yeah.
prime years here
Special
of
player.
getting it done.
Yeah, and that's Buffalo offense has turned into a pass-first offense. Josh Allen is constantly looking to Diggs. He gets peppered with targets. He gets looked at in the red zone. He looks like he can beat just about any defender. He's always open, and so that is a player that I'm definitely going to try to see if I can't get a little bit more of in the off season.
So, all right, I got to share this. So I just did the Aaron Rodgers deal, and the guy who
Okay.
did the Henry deal in the other league just messaged me and he goes, "I think you're going to beat me this year. What do you give me for Henry in this matchup?" I think the word is getting out that I'm just buying Derrick Henry.
Buying up Henry. Buying up championships, more like it. I mean, come on.
Hey,
yeah, buying championships. I'll say it this: there's no running back I'd rather have for the fantasy football playoffs than Derrick Henry.
I know, and I was looking at it, and out of my 9 playoff shots here, he's involved in 8 of them, whether I have him or someone else has him, and I'm like, one way or another, he's either going to win it for me or he's going to win it for somebody else. Didn't mean to cut you off on that one. I just got that offer, and I'm like, whoo.
Nice.
We know Diggs, and I know you're a big Diggs fan as well. Gabriel Davis has been that guy that, we could have got 3rd, 4th round and of your rookie draft, and he's actually looked like a nice, solid wide receiver 2 opposite Stephon Diggs, with Cole Beasley complimenting in the middle.
Yeah, and I think he's in that wide receiver 3 range. Like we talked about, the Broncos secondary is really hurting right now. I think Allen is my clear number 1 quarterback for this week. The ceiling is sky high in that matchup here. And it's interesting because, we talked about Beasley right after the John Brown injury, and it doesn't sound like he'll be ready to come back yet. And, Brown's got 1 more year in Buffalo, but he'll be a free agent after that. So certainly Davis has some long-term upside here.
Yeah, that's a great one. And then not all that exciting of a game, but wanted to talk again a little bit about, we talked about Brandon Ayuk, but Logan Thomas again looked good. I mean, Logan Thomas, we weren't quite in a spot last week, John, where you were a believer in him being a top 10 tight end. Right now, he's moved into the top 6 as far as fantasy points for the season. Are you starting to believe on Logan Thomas yet? Are you willing to throw him in your lineup?
Yeah, I think he's starting to show some consistency in that offense. I'm a little concerned about what may be happening at quarterback right now. We might be looking at Dwayne Haskins. I think that the offense is going to change quite a bit next year. So I may not be quite as high, but you're right. I mean, you got to respect the consistency that he's showing. I will come back around to the other one on that offense that you asked me about earlier, which is Antonio Gibson. And it, frankly, it is kind of hard to talk about. I mean, we've talked about him a lot on the pod, but I'm still kind of hoping and praying that he figures out a way to get in my lineups this week. And I really need him. So, yeah, I don't know what you guys are hearing, but it sounds like the turf toe could typically keep out 2 to 4 weeks. So I'm kind of to the point where I'm maybe, hey, can we work something out for week 16, Antonio? Help me out here.
Yeah, and that's one of those things where if your league does not have a deadline, you might be able to move around in that rookie tier. Move around with some of those other guys and try to test the waters and see if the guy that has Dobbins or the guy that has Swift you can play around with roster wise and maybe add a little bit or get something in there. Swift has looked good. We could talk about these rookie running backs all day, but we are about to hit that 1 hour mark. So why don't you guys tell everybody, where they can find you guys, anything you're working on, and what would be the ultimate Christmas present for you this week on what player would go off? John, we'll go with you first.
All right, yeah, Playoff John, actually. Playoff John.
Playoff John. Yeah, I keep messing
Playoffs.
assistant to the regional manager. I keep forgetting that.
Yeah, no, that's cool. That's cool. But yeah, Playoff John. You can find me Dynasty_trades on Twitter. And man, we would love nothing more to help you out with your lineups and work through. I'm actually in my DMs and looking at matchups already and trying to help a few folks out. We're looking at trades, comparing values. It's so much fun. Frankly, I'm looking at so many of my matchups, and I'm hoping that somehow Derrick Henry doesn't just go bananas. If that would be a nice Christmas present, because I'm facing him and some of my opponents. Oh, I would really love, though, nothing more than see Jonathan Taylor go completely crazy on the Houston Texans this week and just watch his value skyrocket and help me win some of my leagues where I'm throwing him in my lineups. I think that Jonathan Taylor is an RB1 this week, and as long as he continues to get that workload like he has been, sky's the limit for that kid. So, those are a couple, and I will also come back around the one that Mung mentioned, super sneaky play. I agree, Jeff Wilson for the Niners, especially if Mostert's out. He got the MRI today, re-aggravated the ankle injury, and I think you could absolutely consider him as an RB2 if Mostert's out in that game against Dallas. Come on. That's another one that I would definitely think about. Might even be available on some waiver wires. I did kind of a look ahead waiver wire, picked them up in a couple of leagues last week. So I will likely end up playing him if Mostert misses time. So anyway, reach out anytime, and we'd love to help you guys.
Love it. That's great stuff from Playoff John. You got a cooler nickname than me. My son listened to my podcast, and I referred to myself as Mr. Buy. That had a different connotation for a 13-year-old boy. He kind of he let me have it on that one. But you can find me at Dynasty_DadFF. Mung, any cool nicknames for you? And let's bring it home.
No, nothing crazy for me. I think Mung's pretty unique already. But you guys can find me on Twitter at FFA_Mung, MENG. And I'll leave you guys with a real quick lightning round of some, lower key guys who could help you win this week if you're desperate. We've got Chase Daniel. He's facing Tennessee. I mean, their secondary has been awful. If Matthew Stafford's out, he's free on a lot of waiver wires here. We already talked about Jeff Wilson, so I'll skip over that one. Thanks, John. That's a great pick. I love him this week. Tyron Johnson. If Mike Williams misses this week with that back injury against that awful Raiders secondary, Justin Herbert has a great deep ball. He could end up being a huge, huge producer here. And then finally, not a sexy name, but Jordan Reed and Ross Dwelly. There are rumblings that Kyle Shanahan did not commit to Nick Mullins. So we could see some C.J. Beathard. And the last time we saw C.J. Beathard earlier this year, George Kittle got 15 targets and Deebo Samuel's out. So those tight ends could get peppered here.
Great stuff as usual, Mung. And, you might be down, but not out. Don't sell out to, you might feel you don't have that opportunity, but some of those guys really hit late on the season. And some of those guys that you're bringing up are great fill-ins. So thanks again for tuning into the Smash Accept podcast. Enjoy the process.
See you guys.